An entitled Karen and her husband freak out on me when I offer to get extra plates for their sons, as they go off on a tangent that they would never eat any of our food and that the only thing they'll ever eat is McDonald's. And I've honestly never been more confused or blown away by someone's weird attitude in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, let me start by giving just a little bit of background information. I've been a server for about 7 years now, almost 8, and this happened to me last night, and I know that you guys are gonna get a kick out of this. So last night we were extremely busy. Also, it was only me and another experienced server on the floor. The other 3 servers were just new hires. I was getting my butt kicked so hard, and so was the other experienced server. The hostess just kept seating us too while taking it easy on the new hires, despite being extremely busy and having to make hot tea, which at my restaurant is a huge pain in the neck. We have to take this stupid big box full of several different flavors of hot tea to the table, let them pick out what they want, and then walk all the way back and make the stupid thing. And we have to do this every time, even if they've already had one. Anyways, despite all of this, I was doing great and taking care of my people. Then I got a 5-top. It was 3 kids and their parents. I greeted them, got their drinks, and after giving them their drinks, they were ready to order. But only the parents ordered. Now, I'm a mom as well, and when I go to a restaurant, I always share with my youngest because we both eat like birds. So I asked the mom if she would like 3 extra plates for her kids in case they were going to share. And this is where things went really downhill. The dad laughed and said, "Only if you've got McDonald's in here." The mom then immediately got irritated and started on this rant. She said to me, "My boys are autistic and have sensory issues, and the only thing they can eat is McDonald's." And she just went on and on. At the end of it, I just said, "Oh, okay, I'll go ahead and get the menus out of your way then." So I take their menus and I go send in their order. Everything else goes smoothly, and I check on them after getting their food, with them saying that everything is great. I made sure to refill their drinks when needed, and I didn't even think that there was a problem. They pay their bill and then they left a 10% tip. Then, as they're leaving, they go to my manager and tell them that it was the worst service they've ever had. Luckily, where I work, we have amazing managers who usually side with us servers and will get the facts before just pulling the trigger on us. He asked her what was wrong with her service, but she simply couldn't answer that and instead huffed her way out the door with her family. My manager then came up to me later and told me what happened. I laughed and gave my side of the story, and he laughed, and I obviously had to tell my other servers what happened, and we all got a good laugh about it. Like, seriously, what am I supposed to do? Go to McDonald's for them? Was I supposed to sympathize with her about her 3 autistic kids who had to watch their parents eat first in front of them? My sister is autistic. She has Asperger's, and she doesn't want pity or sympathy. She just wants to be treated like a regular human being, which is exactly what I did for that table. So genuinely, did I do something wrong? Or was that table just impossible to save from the start? You didn't do anything wrong. If I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. I mean, here you have a family of 5 people and only 2 of them are ordering food. Like, that seems like a really big red flag, and I think you made the right choice of trying to be relatable and be like, okay, let me get you like 3 extra plates. Because, you know, most kids are gonna be like, wait a second, I want some of your food now that I see it in front of me. Like, that's not unusual for you to try to be accommodating. What is unusual though, is this weird entitled Karen going off on you, being like, oh my god, my kids only like McDonald's, as if you were somehow supposed to like read her mind or something like that. Like, if your kids seriously need to eat at McDonald's or anything like that, then you probably should have gone there, or at least get a babysitter and then go out with just the 2 of you. There's no reason to take this out on the server. They didn't do anything to you. So honestly, I don't think you did anything wrong, and I think the way these people acted was incredibly entitled. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled couple at my restaurant job make my life a living nightmare, constantly giving me impatient, dirty looks as if I wasn't already working myself down to the bone. And I seriously hope I never have a day like this ever again in my life. Here's what happened. So I was working at a privately owned fine dining restaurant some years back. It was a 3-story building, and even though we had food runners, all staff was required to help run food to the parties on the floors we weren't working if we were in the kitchen when it was plated. It wasn't an ideal system to begin with, but it became even less so the busier we got. Well, there was one particular Mother's Day where Murphy's Law decided to come and take a massive dump on the place. Reservations had been lost or deliberately not booked by a hostess who had since been fired. Now, in her defense, she was wrongfully terminated, but she completely screwed over us as well as the owners. Also, a nasty bug was going around, and what staff we did have was all sick as dogs, miserable and exhausted from the grueling double we pulled the day before, and the kitchen was 5 tickets deep in the weeds. Our wine rep didn't drop off 3 cases of the featured champagne, and this is stuff that we had advertised at a special price. And our only bartender chose their other job over us that day, so we were stuck making most of our own drinks on top of everything else. It was a complete disaster. So I had an 8-top that was looking to be my only saving grace during this nightmare fever dream that I was working through. We didn't do auto gratuity on holidays, and why that's the case I will never know. Things had gone well initially, but took a sudden turn into a steep dive off a cliff once we got to the halfway point. We somehow ran out of several menu items, even though we were only 4 hours into the shift, between relaying delays and out of stock food and drink items to them, and running around like a chicken with my head cut off, with trays of food up, down, sideways, and outside. They were getting increasingly impatient and upset, mostly because they couldn't see me working my butt off. I was drenched in sweat. My cuffs looked like I dunked them in coffee from helping load dishes in between running food, and this is because the dishwasher jammed and it took an hour to fix. And my makeup was reminiscent of crying because I got stood up at prom. Things were going downhill very fast, but things get significantly worse when this entitled couple sit in my section. I had a 2-top who had been absolute miserable jerks since the moment their oversized bottoms hit their seats, and their food was up as I staggered dazed into the kitchen as chef is bellowing the phrase hands. We had to substitute one of their sides and no one had let me know so I could prepare them, so I mentally braced for the chewing out session I was about to walk into. I was 20 feet away when I saw the man at the 2-top frantically looking around. When his beady eyes spotted me, the sneer on his face confirmed that he'd been searching for me and wasn't too pleased about whatever it was he had to wait on. I could see my 8-top head swiveling as well, the disappointment on their faces when they realized it wasn't their food coming to them, despite having been there for an hour at least. Other tables in my section were all looking distressed as well, whether it be from the hunger, the heat, and the hassle that should have been a nice meal out for their moms or wives. In that moment, my mind cleared and I made a decision. I stumbled, half windmilling my arms as an attempt to maintain my balance and my plates. I initially intended to drop to one knee, valiantly managing to save the beautiful fillet with a pat of compound butter melting perfectly on top, and the pan-seared salmon with an artfully drizzled sauce, with parsley carefully placed on the side, cut from the chef's personal herb garden. But what I failed to take into account was my naturally clumsy nature that I had to fight tooth and nail to overcome every single shift I work when hastily crafting this plan. So what actually happened was I pitched headfirst into the water station, upending an entire tray of heavy, polished silverware and a half-filled stainless steel pitcher onto my head, while sending my dishes flying down the aisle, where they exploded on the metal base of table 44. Now, even my awful 2-top ended up leaving 18%, and the 8-top collectively left me over 25%. I wouldn't even try for sympathy tips if the mistakes were my fault, but this day especially was completely out of my control, so I just don't feel bad doing what I needed to do. Yeah, that is a really rough situation. It clearly sounds like one of those days where if it can go wrong, it definitely will. And it doesn't help that you have people staring at you begging for your food, almost saying to you, wow, you need to work harder. And it's like, are you kidding me right now? I'm literally running with my head cut off. So hopefully things work out in the future and you're able to have better days at that restaurant, because what you described definitely sounded incredibly awful. My retired mother lives with me rent-free and I honestly want out. But if I leave, she will literally be left with nothing. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my mother is retired and has no income other than a couple of stock dividends that she's had for years and Social Security from my father, who passed away about 26 years ago. She is unable to work due to medical reasons. She cannot get medical disability or retirement benefits from my understanding, as both would negate the Social Security and she would be paid even less. I am paying 100% of the rent, the gas and electric, as well as any streaming services and Spotify. I also pay for my own personal bills, which include my insurance, my car note, my cell phone, credit cards, gasoline, I mean, you name it. My mother is only responsible for the internet bill and food. She also pays for her own personal bills, but complains that she can barely afford that. She is extremely difficult to live with and very dependent. She has severe depression with some anxiety. She can't seem to find a doctor that she likes, and there have also been a lot of medication changes lately. This hasn't been the cause of any mental illness, but it has certainly made things a lot worse. She gets very angry and nasty sometimes, and there is no reasoning with her. She will get offended at anything, and it's honestly not pleasant. And no, this is not dementia or anything of the sort. I do speak to her regular doctors, and she's not committable. My mother guilt trips me constantly over anything and everything, always needs to know what I'm doing, and is always criticizing everything. I mean, nothing is ever good enough. I can't date anyone because she will tear them apart. She cannot see the good in them, only the bad, and this has gone on since I was a teenager. I've tried just not discussing anyone I'm dating, but then it turns into how I don't ever talk to her about anything, and that I never want to hear what she has to say. I basically live in my room when I'm home because I just can't be around her. The point of this whole thing is that I just don't know what to do. I do love my mother very much, but we've had a strained relationship since I was a teenager. Setting boundaries doesn't work, putting my foot down doesn't work. We've had discussion after discussion. I want to be able to live my life. I cannot live like this any longer. I'm not looking for judgment, I'm just looking for advice. It makes me sick to my stomach to even think about moving somewhere without her. I mean, she has nothing. How can I move on with my life without ruining hers? What should I do? Wow, this really sounds like a tricky situation, because from the sounds of it, it really seems like your mom has nowhere else to go. For context, the original poster is 40 years old and their mom is 70. She's got no income, she's got nothing besides what, Social Security and a few other things? Like, this really is a rock and a hard place situation, and it really is unfair to you completely. But I think you need to remember going into this, regardless of what you choose to do, that no matter how you try to phrase it or how you try to go about this, your mom is probably going to freak out on you the second you try to move out without her. I think that is just inevitable, and I think you need to understand that going into this. She clearly doesn't respect you, and she treats you like garbage and is clearly using you, so it's honestly unfortunate and it's really not fair. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. So hopefully you can find some kind of solution. I don't know if there's some kind of like local service that can help you transition her into her like own home or something like that, but regardless, I honestly hope it works out in your favor, because the way your mom is treating you is honestly not fair. Am I the jerk for yelling at my sister after she called my partner a gold digger? Because right now I am still upset, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I come from a well-off family, but my dad always taught me to work hard and have class. When I was 14 years old, I started working at my dad's company part-time to earn my allowance, and when I turned 16, I became a real part-time employee. My dad decided to retire when I was 29 years old and handed the business to me. Back in my second year of university, I met Kim. Kim is not his real name. We were in the same course and ended up in the same group for a group project near the beginning of the year. We had a similar sense of humor and clicked as friends very quickly. One day, he mentioned he loves to cook and told me that we should cook together because I love to cook as well. And that weekend, we went to his place, bought some ingredients, and cooked together. This then became us going shopping for ingredients after class on Friday, and I would stay the night at his place and we would cook on the weekend, and this became our weekly routine. Now, back then, I just told others that we were just friends, but in hindsight, this is definitely when I started to fall for him. I finally asked him out a few months later, and he said yes. We lived in the same house with two other friends in our third year, and I asked him to move in with me after we graduated. From the beginning, I told Kim that I would not care if he didn't work, but he insisted he wanted to contribute financially. But after about a year, I had to make him stop. Due to the difference in our incomes, he was working himself half to death and was getting ill trying to contribute enough. I sat him down and I told him that whatever money he made didn't matter, that if he wanted to work, I wanted him to be happy. So he cut back his hours, then moved to part-time, and then decided to quit and work on his own projects. But he insisted that I let him take on some of the housework. Now, with that bit out of the way, this is where some of the issues begin. My sister and her partner both work, and he makes significantly less than her. And in private to me, she's made it known to me that she resents being the breadwinner. She sees all her male colleagues spoil and treat their wives, and wishes her partner would do the same. Now, he does treat her, but just not to the same level due to the fact that he basically makes about half as much as they do. Now, recently, I was talking to her about what I was going to get Kim for his birthday next month. She kept telling me that my ideas were too much and that I should get something cheaper since he doesn't contribute. Now, when she said that, I got a bit annoyed because I told her about Kim's insecurities of not making or being enough, and I told her he contributes more than enough. But then she said something that honestly blew my mind. She called him a glorified gold digger. And when she said that, I yelled at her. I told her to shut up and to not talk about Kim in that way. After calming down, I do feel bad. I know how she feels about her own financial position, but I don't think it's fair that she takes it out on me or Kim, even if Kim wasn't physically there. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. Your sister sounds like she's really like projecting her frustrations and insecurities on you, and it almost sounds like she's trying to demonize Kim in some kind of way. Like, for starters, sisters, your situation is none of her business, and she has no say in how you handle your house. So for her to be like, oh, he's just a gold digger, he's just getting money from you, or to even imply that Kim is mooching off of you in some kind of way, that is incredibly insulting, and I wouldn't put up with that for a second. It's downright disturbing for her to make that kind of assumption when you know for a fact that she's talking about her own relationship. She basically wishes she could be in Kim's situation because it sounds like she doesn't want to work. So no, of course you're not the jerk. Your sister is absolutely out of line, and what she's saying is absolutely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for telling a new friend not to come to brunch unless she could try to keep the conversations light? Because every time I've talked to her, she has always dumped her emotional baggage at my doorstep, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Let me start off by saying that I've had an awful week. I won't go into every unnecessary detail, but suffice to say the collision of various medical, work, and relationship stressors all at once have definitely pushed me to my last nerve. I banged my wrist on a doorknob yesterday, and I sunk to the floor and cried on the spot for half an hour. And this is because I simply couldn't take one more thing right now. I had brunch planned for today with a pretty new acquaintance. It was actually scheduled weeks ago, so I didn't anticipate what kind of shape I was gonna be in for today. We've hung out a handful of times and we have a lot in common, but she has a bit of an oversharing problem. My life sucks in the short term, because right now I'm like a lightning rod for 2 years worth of garbage that's all going wrong all at once. Her life sucks for more long term because of family and mental health related reasons, which she has started going into ever increasing levels of morose detail. And I've got to be honest, it is way too much for how little we actually know each other. I am really not in a place to become close friends with someone who chronically does not have a modicum of their stuff together. But because of my current lightning rod situation, I have not been able to make a clean break. So I figured I would just get through today and that I would tell her I need to take a step back when I had a crumb of dopamine to spare for that uncomfortable conversation. So at like 6 in the morning, she texted me stuff like, "You are literally the only person I can trust," and also saying that her life is falling apart because she has a week to find her own place. And I'm thinking, okay, that's relatable, but also, what are you talking about? I am not your Facebook wall circa 2011, and I'm just thinking ahead to the hour-long hardcore trauma dump session that I am literally about to endure. So I text her back and say, hey, I'm really sorry for everything that you're going through right now, but I am really in no position to be anyone's emotional support right now. So if you don't think we can have a brunch today without you bringing up intense stuff, I would rather cancel. She responded back by saying, wow, okay, followed up several hours later with a bombardment of tweets about how the world doesn't revolve around me, and how she's so sorry that the stuff she's going through in her life right now simply didn't wait until it was convenient for me, while also saying that it sucks to be vulnerable and in need of a listening ear and be told essentially to shut up. She also said that I care more about enjoying my brunch than I do about being an empathetic person. Now, I don't know if my exhaustion and stress made me act like an awful person, or if it made me justified to want to have a meal where I could actually relax for an hour. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? In my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk, and I think the fact that you were open and honest with this friend was really a good step in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the way you may have said this to this friend was a little bit aggressive, and it could have been like reworded in some kind of way, but I think her reaction is completely over the top. She was definitely looking to dump her emotional baggage on you, and that after a long time, especially with a new friend, is like really weird. Like, I'm all about being a listening ear for just about anybody, and I'm more than willing to help out if I can. But when every single conversation goes in this direction, honestly, that is incredibly exhausting, and I just don't think I would want to deal with that in the slightest. So no, I don't think you're the jerk here. I think the other girl in this situation has a really weird attitude, and I do not think that you were in the wrong for setting up expectations for the brunch you were going to share. Am I the jerk for not caring about my parents or even wanting to get to know them? Because at this point, I have my own life, and I'm kind of sick of their guilt tripping all of the time. Here's what happened. So I'm a 25-year-old female, and I was the glass child in my family. I'm the youngest of 5, and I'm the only one without severe health or mental issues, so I fell through the cracks. I spent almost all my time alone in my room reading or playing video games, and I generally didn't mind this. And I also want to make it clear here that I don't resent my parents or siblings. They didn't parentify me or make me my sibling's caretaker. My things were never taken for my siblings' benefit. I was just invisible because I didn't need them the way the other 4 did. When I was 9 or 10 years old, I made friends with 2 girls who were also in similar situations as mine, and we were and still are currently our own little found family. I went to college and graduated with the 2 of them. I moved to a new state just with the 2 of them. My family was busy, and that was fine. I didn't mind because that's just how life is when you have 4 sick siblings. Fast forward to November 2023, and my mom calls me 3 days before Thanksgiving, which is super unusual because we just don't talk anymore. The last time we spoke on the phone was when she was telling me the time and place of my sister's funeral. We text small talk occasionally, and our relationship is incredibly surface level, and honestly, that's an improvement from my high school years when we had no relationship. Mom asked me what time to expect me for Thanksgiving, and I had no idea they were planning Thanksgiving this year. She never mentioned it before this. Now, I already had plans, and also if she wanted me to come for Thanksgiving, I would have needed to book a plane ticket months ago. So giving me 3 days notice is not okay by me. She didn't remember that I live 2 states away now, but was upset that I would leave her alone on Thanksgiving, which felt very guilt-trippy to me because she has dad. When I refused to come after a couple of attempts, she eventually hung up on me. After about 30 minutes of scrolling back to check our messages and making sure and confirming that I didn't miss something, I sent her a text to let her know that I had a skiing trip booked for Christmas this year, but I would love to catch up with her and dad after the new year. Shortly after, I received a text message from dad telling me that if I didn't come home for Christmas, he would stop paying for my college. I then reminded him that I graduated 3 years ago and that if he was still paying for someone's school, he should look into that because he was getting scammed. To be honest, I was pretty upset at this point about the guilt trip as well as the veiled threats, so I just put my phone on mute and I ignored it. Now, my mom did call a couple more times but eventually stopped. She did not text me on Thanksgiving or Christmas and did not respond to me texting her. It's now February and I haven't spoken to my parents since, and my 2 best friends are telling me that I'm kind of a jerk and that they would be super happy if their parents tried to reach out to them. So honestly, I need to know, am I the jerk in this scenario? Because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. No, I don't figure the jerk, but it really seems like your family is completely out of touch with your life. Like, I can understand them wanting to stay in contact with you, but it seems like they're going about this the wrong way, and it really just seems like a toxic way of dragging you back into the family, and that in my opinion just doesn't settle well with me, and that kind of feels weird. And the fact that your dad would give you an ultimatum about college and be like, well, if you're not going to come along for Christmas, I'm not going to pay for your college. Seriously, buddy, that is not the way to get anybody to do anything for you. It is completely irrational for the original poster to drop everything that he's doing just to come home and spend Thanksgiving or Christmas with the 2 of you. And I'm sure they probably would have been willing if you planned this in advance, but it's the fact that they're calling so close to the holiday itself that it honestly feels very manipulative and very inappropriate. And I don't blame you for being upset about this in the slightest. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.